What's going on YouTube? My name is Eric Sun and I'm a photographer based in Atlanta, Georgia. And in this video, I want to talk about corporate headshots. Now for corporate headshots, it's something that I do quite regularly and I really enjoy doing it. I would say a good chunk of my business is doing headshots for mostly teams, not so much as individuals, but I want to talk about it to kind of show my setup, to show what I use, the equipment that I use, the lenses, the camera, and all of these things. And I will have pictures to show you as well of my corporate headshot setup. It's my go-to, and I like to do things I like to be very efficient. I like things to be really simple, where there is a very low margin of error. And because I don't have a studio, I travel a lot to clients, to their offices, their office spaces, to their homes, or anything like that. So my setup is easily transportable. It's very easy to take with me wherever I need, set it up. Granted, there are some limitations and stuff like that with my setup, even as compact as it is. I can fit everything into my wagon that I take with me. I can fit my backdrop stand, my light stands, my light modifiers, my lights, backdrop clips, reflector stand, like anything that I need, I'm able to fit everything in my wagon. Every once in a while, I may need to bring extra equipment based off of what the client wants and the look that the client wants, but most of the time, my go-to setup is very simple, and so I really like that. And so without further ado, let's get started. All right, so for corporate headshots, I would say right off the bat, it is a really great genre to get into if you are not already doing it. If you're interested in getting into it, hopefully this video will help you. The biggest thing that you will want to think about is every space is different. So the reason why I landed on the equipment list that I have for my headshot is because every space is very different. Some spaces you have tons of room, very high ceilings, no windows, and it's like perfect. There are some spaces though that are very small, to where it's a challenge for you to have to be able to even figure out if your backdrop can fit in the room. But the biggest hurdle that you should think about is having a go-to setup that is very versatile no matter what size room it is. And I'll show you some photos throughout the video of just the type of setups and the types of rooms that I've had to set up in. Some are great, like I said, and some are just, you really got to problem solve it. But I say that the biggest part of problem solving on site when you travel to your clients is, one, being able to control your light well, know how to control your light, know how to block light, how to add light, just know how to create the scene that you want and the lighting setup that you want for your subject, for your headshots, but also being able to be flexible enough that if a room is too small, you can still get the job done with the equipment that you have. But if the room is too big, that you won't have too much of extra ambient light kind of coming in and just interrupting your scene, or reflections, or anything like that. Some things that you can do beforehand, something that I do is that if possible, I like to ask for a photo of the room. So it could be a conference room, it could be just an office space, it could be the lobby, it could be a hallway, it could be, yeah, it could literally be any space that the client has that they're thinking about, you know, having their headshots taken, just so that when they send you the photo, you can kind of have an idea what the room looks like, where you can set up, what the lighting conditions are like, what you need to bring. So with that said, that's something that I wanted to, from the jump, kind of let you know. Getting into it, you got to be able to problem solve with the equipment that you have to create the looks that you want, to create the great images of your clients that they're paying you for. So the main equipment that I have that I use for corporate headshots is, of course, the first thing I got to talk about is the camera itself. This is the camera that I use. This is the Canon R5 Mark I. It is a camera that I've had for a long time. I really enjoy using this camera for photos, for video. I have my gripes about it, mostly the overheating, but overall this camera is fantastic for photos and it's fantastic for portrait work, in my opinion. I love using it for events and for headshots, for portraits. This is just my go-to, and as you can see that I have a EF to RF adapter right here. You can hear it click. I don't own any RF lenses. Now, I will say if you want to get RF lenses, that's entirely up to you. I don't personally feel like it's a necessity at this point. I have all EF glass and I really love the glass that I have, and I don't really feel like I need to switch. It does everything I need it to do. Granted, RF glass, they're probably faster, they're probably sharper. I mean, they're definitely newer, so there are some pros to switching to RF glass. The cons for me is that they're all like $2,000 and up, and I don't want to spend that kind of money again. I have all the focal lengths that I need, and to just switch them out just to be RF lenses, it doesn't really make sense. And also because the multiple cameras that I have, EF mounts have been around a lot longer, that I don't really know, but I don't think that there's many RF mount adapters, like RF to E mount adapters if I use a Sony camera or whatever like that. So sticking with RF glass for me has been great, and all the lenses that I use for headshots are, I mean, they're amazing, and you'll see evidences of that as well. So yeah, I don't have any RF glass. You're able to get away and save some money with EF glass. Just if you have the R5, you got to buy the adapter. Yeah, just something to think about. But yeah, this camera by far awesome. I do sometimes bring my laptop with me to shoots because I like to tether. Now tethering is really great. I mean, sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of a pain to pack up everything. Just because I work off of this one laptop, I have all these things plugged in, all my hard drives, all this stuff, and then to have to like take it apart, put it in my bag, put in my tether cable, bring in my charging cable, and an SSD if I need to, depending on how much space I have on my computer. It can get kind of annoying, and it definitely weighs your bag down a lot, but shooting with tethering is by far, I think, awesome, because not only are you able to go through with your client as you're taking the pictures, you're able to just also have everything just already backed up on your computer. So not only do you have a dual memory card with the R5, you also have all the backup photos on your computer, so you can just, you know, your Lightroom sessions already created, and then when you get home, go and just start editing or all of that stuff. There have been a couple of times to where I have taken their headshots and they're like, hey, can you like edit it real quick to let me know kind of what it will look like in the end? And then so I have it on my computer, pull it up, throw the preset on that I want to use, you know, make some subtle adjustments depending on the lighting and the scene, get them to check off on it, and then I save that preset and then I apply it to all the other photos. And so this is really great setup especially for teams when you're shooting like 15, 20, 30, 40 people even, or even if you're covering an event and you're just having a professional headshot booth at the event and just going through really quick, setting a preset, exporting it, and then emailing it to them, you know, all kind of at the same time, I think is a big game changer. And so just, yeah, again, having a laptop, you just have so much more, your level of service just increases, in my opinion, with that. Of course, I can't show you my laptop, but I do have an Apple MacBook Pro. It is an M3 chip, and it is a 16-inch, I think it's a 16-inch 2023 laptop. So tethering, awesome, definitely recommend it. Now the two lenses that I use I used to use 3, but I would say I don't really use the 85mm as much anymore, just because it's the prime lens, and depending on the space of this room size and all that stuff, I just prefer having zooms. It's just a lot more versatile. I can punch in if I need to and zoom out, instead of having to just stick with the prime. The 85 is great for portraits. I still use it for portraits and for headshots sometimes if I have the space for it, but I don't use it as often as all of my other lenses. To be honest, I think the 85mm prime, I mean, it's a fantastic lens, but I don't use it as much. But the two lenses that I do use a lot for it is, the first one is this one right here. It is the Canon 70-200. This is the Mark II 2.8. There's a review on my channel if you want to watch that, just kind of let you know the pros and cons of it. This lens is by far amazing. I mean, I use this lens so much for headshots. I definitely would recommend it, and even as a Mark II, not even the Mark III. I talk a little bit about that on the video as well, but I don't personally think the Mark III EF lens is worth it to get an upgrade. If you can get a Mark II one and save a little bit of money, I feel like that's the route to go. So I have the Mark II. I got this lens in a kit with my 5D Mark IV way back in the day, and it's the same lens. I've used it ever since. The other lens that I really like to use a lot of times is another Canon lens. It is the 24-70. Right here, this is a 2.8 as well. This is probably the most versatile lens that you will probably ever own. If you don't have a 24-70 equivalent, then I would recommend that you get one. Again, this is a 2.8, and just being able to go from 24, zoom in all the way to 70, and then from having a 70 to 200, I mean, you have pretty much all your focal lengths from 24 to 200 covered. This lens, I use this lens probably the most for all headshots, mostly because of the spaces that I shoot in. Every once in a while, I'm able to bring out the 70 to 200, and I really love it when I'm able to. But because of the room size, sometimes I just don't have enough space to move all the way back to bring out the 70 to 200. Sometimes I need to shoot at 50. Sometimes I can do 70, but that's it. So those are the two lenses that I use, along with my Canon R5. And so I did mention that there are 2 to 3, I use 2 to 3 lights. The lights that I use are old lights. I got them, they're like the old version of the Explorer 600s. This is the light. As you can see, this thing is huge, but it's also old. I mean, these were the first mono lights that I ever gotten, and I got 2 of them. I got them in a kit with the C-stand and with the 28-inch modifier. These lights are amazing. They are super heavy. I will say that, like, they are heavy. You can definitely, I feel like you can build a house with one of these, or like knock somebody out. But I really like these. Because there's a protective cover for the lens right here, and you can also take out this part, this that protects the bulb, this reflector dish up here, and then there's the bulb right there. The great thing about these is that I've never had to change these bulbs. These bulbs are the same bulbs that came with this light. And so every headshot session that I have, I use this light. And here's the battery for it. The battery is, I mean, it's not small, it's kind of big, and it's got a little like LED light indicator right here that tells you the battery levels and all that stuff. And all you do is that you kind of just put it on, click, and then you're kind of good to go. And then if I turn it on, got that little electric sound. And then, I mean, you can put it in different groups, you can put it in different categories for light control. And so all the lights that I have are flashpoint lights. I don't have any pro photo lights or anything like that. These are more budget friendly. They do what I need it to do, and they're great. I don't have many complaints about this light at all. I do have 2 of these lights, and I use one for a fill, for a key light, and I use one for a rim light. And the 2 modifiers that I usually use are a 60-inch white umbrella with a modifier over it, or the diffuser cover over it. It's an umbrella, it works amazing. And the second one that I use is a strip box. So those are the 2 modifiers that I normally use for everything. The strip box obviously is for a rim light, and then the umbrella is for the key light. So the key light lights up the subject, the rim light just gently highlights I should do this side, where it highlights the side of the person so that it kind of helps the subject stand out from the background a little bit more, and it adds a little bit more depth to the image. So the strip box is double diffused, and I put a grid on it. The umbrella only has that one diffusion cover that I put over it, and then that's just what I use. It shoots inside into the umbrella, and then the light bounces from the umbrella inside the umbrella out onto the subject. So that's almost like double diffusion as well. It's not a direct light pointing straight at the subject. And the quality of light just from the Explorer 600s and from those 2 modifiers, I mean, to me, it's like everything that I wanted. Like, once I got these lights, I could tell that there is a difference in quality of light. It also depends on your setup and all that stuff, but those are, you know, what I have and what I love using. Now, sometimes I have a third light because I do have another is either a speed light or having my Evolve 200s kind of pointing at the background, which then adds a little circle gradient to the background so that it separates the subject even more. That I don't do as often, mostly because the umbrella is so big that it definitely the light shines on the backdrop if I want it to. I just move the subject closer to the backdrop. If I don't want as much light spill on the backdrop, I bring the subject closer to me and further away from the backdrop, and I bring the light closer to me as well, just so that there's less spill. And the last piece of equipment that I have outside of my lights is a reflector. This is a 5-in-1 reflector where it has a silver side, white side, black side, gold side, and also a diffuser. And so I have a stand with it. And it is, I mean, it's very versatile. I never use the gold, really. I hardly use the silver. I don't use the black for headshots unless I need to, you know, flag some light. And I don't use the diffuser, so I use the white side almost all the time, and I set it up close to the subject so that when the key light flashes, the light bounces off the reflector and fills in the shadows on the subject's face on the opposite side. And so it's big enough to where it's able to light up a good portion of the subject. You can also use a V-flat or, like, you know, a white foam board or whatever like that to also bounce light. Or if you're also in a white room, that could help too. You just adjust your lighting settings to make sure that, you know, you get the look that you want. But I use a reflector. Sometimes I do bring the V-flat, depending on, you know, very rare cases again. So I use the 5-in-1 reflector. It's very travel friendly, and I have a stand for it so I don't have to hold it, or the client doesn't have to hold it. It just sets up and it's right there. One thing that is a little bit challenging with the reflector is the way you position it, how close and how far away from the subject if they have glasses. It is already kind of sometimes a challenge not getting the glare on the glasses from the key light, but then now with the reflector, you got to also remember, if the reflector is reflecting light on the subject, there is a good chance that they'll actually see a reflection of the reflector in the glasses as well. So those are all the equipment that I have. Oh, of course, I have a backdrop stand for my backdrops. Again, my backdrops are 7 feet long, so I need a backdrop that is at least 7 feet long to fit the full backdrop on. And then, you know, of course, it has the bar. You put the bar in together in different sections, however long that you need it to be. Put it on the stands, and then you raise it up. And then I have backdrop clips that I clip to the paper and the bar together so that the paper doesn't keep unrolling. It just, you know, holds it secure and safe. So that's all the equipment that I have and that I use for it, for headshots. I do have cloth backdrops, but I am slowly fizzling out from using them. I just prefer the Savage seamless ones. If I do use a cloth backdrop, it is more so because it's a special request, or it's I'm able to be a little bit more versatile with cloth backdrops in terms of like how they hang, how I drape them, and all that stuff to add texture and some dimension to the background. If it's not, if it's what the client wants and they don't want just a simple plain background and they don't want like their office as their background. There are some times where I don't even need to bring a backdrop because the client will be like, oh, we want some more environmental headshots or environmental portraits where we want the desk in the background, or we want this library in the background, or we want our foyer, and you know, whatever, their office space, they want to highlight that in the background, and so that's what they prefer, and so I don't even bring the backdrop at that point. But while I'm talking to the client and, you know, solidifying all the details, that is something that I do ask. Do you need a backdrop? If so, what color do you prefer? These are the ones that I have at my disposal. Here are some other ones that you can request. But just know that if you do have a special request, that there may be an extra charge depending, you know, on the size of the job. If it's over like 15 people, I don't really charge them extra for the backdrop. If it's less than that, then, you know, maybe I will, depending on, it just all depends on the job. So now I'm going to talk about show you my setup that I have. So these are the different spaces that I've photographed in. Some are great, some are not. So with this, setup. With this room that I have, I don't know if you can tell from this photo, but the room is very, very small. They wanted an all black backdrop, so the backdrop is actually black, not gray. It's just the branding that they have, so they wanted an all black backdrop. They don't want gray, they don't want any gradient or anything. They want it to be as pitch black as possible. So I do darken it again in post depending, especially with this setup, because I had to the room was so small. I mean, I would say it's probably smaller than my office. It was really, really small. I could barely fit the backdrop stand in there. As you can see in this image, that one of the stands is actually in the middle of the doorway. That's the only place that I could, because there's an actual full-on desk behind me. So there was not much room. I tried even doing diagonal. I was like, that's even less space. So it was a hot mess. So in here, instead of using the 60-inch umbrella, what I used was a 32-inch beauty dish with a grid, double diffused with a grid. Now I brought this with me mostly because they wanted an all black backdrop and they wanted me to be able to control how much light hit the backdrop. So I did bring that with me. I did bring my umbrella as well, just in case, depending on the room, because if I had enough space, I would just pull the subject and the light further away from the backdrop. So it would be a nice soft light on the subject. But in this space, because of how small it was, I brought the beauty dish out. I used that instead of the umbrella, just because there was literally no space. I mean, even when I raised it up to get the light at the angle that I wanted, it hit the ceiling. So I had to lower it a little bit, and it was just a lot of finessing to try to make it work in this small space. And also in the space this small, there's just no way I could control how much light bleed was happening, just because the subject was literally right up against the backdrop. There was no way for them to come forward, because if they did come forward, then I would be shooting at a 24 millimeter, and then that would just kind of distort a little bit their features, and I didn't want that. So I kept them as close back up, and I was like, I can figure it out in post. I'll just throw this grid on and I'll try to light it similarly to how I normally do it, because they did look at my website, they liked my work, and so that's kind of the quality of work that they were expecting, and so I finessed it. But this is a perfect example of a room that you would have no idea of knowing, because the person actually flew in from out of town, and so I've shot for this company before, but the person they wanted me to photograph flew in from out of town to this new site location that they just had, and so there were no photos for it. I couldn't get any insight into it about what the room looked like, and then I only found out that they gave us an office space smaller than my office space at home when I got there. And so I spent a little bit more time than I wanted to setting up, but that's mostly because I try to move things around. I try to move some of the furniture around. I tried different setup angles to see what would work best, and then just what you see is just what I settled on. Now, this one setup, the room is a little bit bigger, it's a little bit longer. So as you can see, and that they wanted an all white backdrop. You can see my lighting setup here as well, where I do have the third light shooting from the bottom up to the background, just to make the background white as possible, because they want the background to be completely white. It's using for their websites and their email signatures, and so they want it to be completely white, so it kind of blends into the website and also into, you know, their email signature, I guess. But you can see that I have the 60-inch umbrella setup. I have the reflector set up on the left side, if you're facing the backdrop, on the left side, and then behind the reflector, behind the subject, is the rim light with the strip box and the grid. And so I have the person stand right in front of that light, hitting the Evolve 200, hitting the background. I have them stand right there, and then I zoom in and out as much as I need, and I do their poses and grab the shot. Now this one is, as you can see, there are times where you will have to set up in a conference room. Conference rooms are good and bad in my opinion. They're good because there's definitely space and there's a lot of long space, but it's bad because it's only long. You don't have a lot of wide space because there's a table, chairs, cabinets, whatever. You can move the chairs over to the other side, but you still have a very narrow strip of where you can work. And you also need enough space just to make sure that the backdrop, there's enough space for the backdrop to be set up and for you to be far away enough for it. And so again, there's just so many things. Your setup should be pretty versatile, and it should be able to allow you to create the quality of images that you normally create, no matter what scenario that you have. Every space is different. There are challenges in every space. Some are easier than others, and some you just literally go in there, set up, take the photos, leave, that's it. But there's going to be more times than not, there's going to be a lot that you're going to have to move around, and that's where your setup really matters and what you bring really matters. Because I don't know anybody that wants to bring all of their equipment with them and then just as if it's a maybe. I mean, you want to just bring enough so that you can get the job done. But I don't know anybody that wants to carry around like tons of equipment on every site. So just being able to keep things small and compact, but very effective is my priority. So yeah, so with all that said, that's pretty much everything with my corporate headshot setup, and what I use, what I like after multiple trial and errors of different gear, different setups, whatever. This is what I like. I like the look, I like how it is, and yeah, that's what I settled on. So definitely leave a comment, leave questions. If you have a different setup or you have different lighting equipment that you really like, definitely leave them in the comments below. If you have any questions about anything, about either my pieces of my equipment, my setup, workflow, whatever, definitely let me know in the comments. Yeah, I mean, if anyone has any tips too, I mean, definitely please feel free to share anything in the comments below. I really appreciate y'all so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video. All right, peace.